Welcome to the Lead Well podcast. Around here, we believe leadership shouldn't cost you your peace, your well-being, or the parts of yourself you've worked so hard to reclaim. I'm your host, Trasetta Washington, leadership wellness coach and strategist, and my mission is to give you practical, actionable steps to reduce overwhelm, lead more effectively, and build a sustainable rhythm for both your team and your life. Let's dive into today's conversation. Hey leaders, welcome back to the podcast. Psychological safety is one of those leadership concepts that sounds great, right? It sounds good until it starts asking you to show up in a way that you're uncomfortable with, right? And quite frankly, it has become a buzzword in leadership spaces. It shows up in culture decks, engagement surveys, and training agendas. But yet, most leaders that I work with still feel a little unsure about what psychological safety actually looks like in practice or what it really requires of them. So today, I want to talk about the truth that most leaders avoid. Because, psychological safety isn't created by good intentions. You should know anything that I talk about on the podcast. You should know that leading well means that you're intentional with the way that you lead. You're very intentional. It doesn't just happen by happenstance, right? Psychological safety is created by leadership behavior that is repeated over time. So before we really get into the nitty gritty, let me first share what is psychological safety anyway. So I'm going to give you the formal definition and then we'll break it down. Right? The formal definition is psychological safety is a shared belief held by members of a team that the team is safe for interpersonal risk taking. People, when they are in a psychologically safe environment, the people there feel confident that they are not going to be embarrassed, rejected, or punished for speaking up with their ideas, asking questions, sharing their concerns, or even mentioning their mistakes, taking accountability for their mistakes. So at its core, psychological safety really means that people feel safe to speak honestly. Not because they are protected from accountability, because that's not what we're talking about. Accountability is still important. What I'm talking about is they feel safe because they can trust how their honesty is going to be received. This isn't something that you can go into a team meeting or staff meeting and just announce that, hey, we're creating a psychologically safe environment for you. No, it doesn't work that way. Psychological safety is something that your team actually experiences within their body, in their nervous system, based on how you respond to the things that they say, the honesty, the questions, the ideas, all those things that they share. And they're not going to decide whether an environment is safe from an analytical place or from a place of logic. This is something that is decided emotionally, and it's based on your leadership patterns. Now, one of the biggest misconceptions about psychological safety is that it is you having to be soft, that you have to lower standards, or that you have to avoid conflict and make everyone feel comfortable all the time. No, that's not what this is. Psychological safety actually allows for higher accountability because people are much more willing to speak up when something isn't working. You can provide them with critical feedback because they're much more open and they are invested in whatever the outcomes are. And truth be told, you can't hold people accountable in an environment where they are afraid to speak up. Silence does not mean alignment. It's often evidence that people feel like they need to protect themselves, that they need to defend themselves. Now, here's the part that most leaders won't admit or won't say out loud. Psychological safety feels a bit risky because it challenges the traditional leadership models that were built on control, right? It asks you as a leader to be much more emotionally aware, not just competent. You can't just be good at your job. You have to be emotionally aware. You have to really lean into your emotional intelligence. And for many leaders, there's this underlying fear that is kind of like what if I lose authority? What if I don't have the answers? What if people resist or push back? So instead of leaning into creating a psychologically safe space for their teams, leaders tend to default to what feels safe for them. And that typically looks like structure and hierarchy or even avoidance. But avoiding psychological safety does not preserve your authority. All it does is push whatever tension is present underneath the surface or sweeps it under the rug, if you will, where it ends up doing way more damage. So what leaders often miss is the amount of emotional risk that their teams actually take on a daily basis. Here's what one of your team members are thinking. If you don't have a psychologically safe environment or culture within your team, your division, your organization, or your organization as a whole, this is what people are thinking before they say something. Like they are silently kind of asking themselves, is it safe for me to say this? How is this going to be received? If I say this, how is it going to be received? They might even be thinking back to the last time that someone spoke up and shared honestly what happened to them. How was it received then? While this is not something that you maybe will see or pick up on, right? Because they're not dramatic, right? This quiet questioning doesn't announce itself. You don't see it, but they are everyday moments or everyday experiences that your team members are dealing with, right? Because they're trying to figure out, can I share this idea? Can I ask questions so that I can gain some clarity? Can I tell you that we've got some issues with that I've got some issues with my capacity. My workload is beyond what I have capacity for right now. Can I share that, I made a mistake? And when you have created an environment where safety is low or where people don't feel safe to be open and honest, silence becomes their strategy. They become performative because they're just simply going with the flow. They're agreeing with you. And what happens is a lot of leaders mistake that quiet for compliance, or worse, even commitment. Psychological safety is typically not broken by one big moment. There's not one big thing that happens that causes the psychological safety to be broken down, right? This is something that happens slowly over time. Think about erosion, right? Beach erosion. This happens over time. Same thing with psychological safety. What it looks like in your team is invalidation, like they feel invalidated. When they speak up, maybe you say, oh, well, that's not really an issue. Or we don't have time for that right now. Or maybe even oh, you're just overthinking, because you're invalidating their ideas. Now you're slowly breaking down that psychological safety. It can also happen by avoiding things, right? But because you are not willing to have hard conversations, you're not addressing discord, or you're not addressing this tension that everyone feels, but no one's speaking up about it. Whatever you avoid, your team is going to end up absorbing. And over time, people are going to stop bringing their full self to work. And it's not because they don't care, but because they've gone into self-preservation. They're protecting themselves. In real life, psychological safety looks very ordinary. It looks like you being the type of leader who listens to your team members without interrupting them, responding to their concerns without being defensive. You ask questions for clarity instead of making assumptions about what it is that they're trying to say. And you admit when you don't know. You don't know everything. And it's okay for you to say, hey, you know what? I'm not sure about that. You have to do this consistently. You have to be predictable with your responses and then follow through. Don't drop the ball. Don't let things just kind of slide. You have to demonstrate that you are creating an environment where psychological safety is present. And here's the part that often gets underestimated. Remember I was talking about emotional intelligence earlier? You can't create psychological safety without being self-aware. Leaders are emotional regulators, whether you want to be or not. And when you are unaware of your own stress, frustration, and triggers, it shows up in your tone. It shows up in your body language. It shows up in your timing. And that unpredictability, especially emotional unpredictability, that kills safety. Leaders who are self-aware notice what is happening inside them before they respond. They pause, they regulate, and as a result, their team feels that steadiness. They pick up on that groundedness within you, even when you're having a hard conversation. It's patterns. That is where the psychological safety lives. It's in patterns. It's not a single conversation. It's not one apology. It's not one really well-run meeting. No, it is patterns. How you give feedback, how you handle disagreement, how you receive questions. And then over time, your team will decide whether it's worth the risk for them to speak up. Now, if you're wondering whether or not your team feels safe, here's some of the signs for you to look for. Are your meetings pretty quiet? Do team members just agree with whatever it is that you say or suggest without very much discussion? High turnover. Maybe people don't take ownership over the tasks that are assigned to them. These are signs or signals that there is not psychological safety within your team. So here's how you build it, right? And I'm not saying you don't have to go out here and completely overhaul the way that you lead. No, first of all, it starts with awareness. Remember, I said that already. Awareness. You've got to do some reflection and think about, okay, well, how do I typically respond when someone disagrees with me? Do I get upset? Do I lash out? Or do I honestly appreciate what it is that the information that the individual is bringing me? How do you handle mistakes? Not just your team members, but your own. Do you take accountability for your mistakes? Do you berate your team members because of the mistakes that they make? Or do you find a path forward? How do you respond under pressure? Do you go into kind of freak out mode, right? You freak out and just go from 0 to 60 and are all frantic. You need to know what your default reactions are, because that's what's going to help you to make the appropriate shifts. And again, we're not talking about overhauling. We're talking about small shifts. These small shifts can have a huge impact. They can lead to really big shifts and results within your team. So maybe, if you tend to kind of react when someone shares something that is disagreeable, thank them honestly. Thank them for their honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. Pause longer after you ask questions. Give more space, give more time. Sit in the silence a little bit longer so that people can actually speak up. When someone takes a risk, follow up. Create space, like treat them well. That safety is going to be built through repeated, trustworthy experiences. When psychological safety is present, your team will collaborate better. They're going to innovate more, and you'll have a lower turnover. They're going to stay with you longer. Research has shown that organizations experience a stronger culture, better decision making, and healthier leadership pipelines when psychological safety is present. This is not it would be nice to have. No, this is a performance strategy. And listen, I get it. Psychological safety is complex, and it's not something that you should be expected to kind of figure out on your own. This is why I work with organizations doing workshops and keynotes and leadership trainings, because I want to help leaders build that emotional intelligence, improve their communication skills, and be more self-aware so that they can create the trust and accountability within their teams all at the same time. If your organization is ready to move beyond just buzzwords and into leadership practices that actually support people and performance, then you can learn more or submit a speaking or facilitation inquiry using the link that's inside of my show notes. Psychological safety does not begin with a policy. It begins with your behavior as a leader. You have the ability, it's within your hands, to shift the level of psychological safety within your team. And I believe you can do it. Until next time, lead well so you can live well.